This is going to be an odd one to be sure. I have had for the past 6 months or so been thinking about the fourth dimension for some reason. I don't know why, I've just have. And I thought it might make a good video. From the outset, I will say most of these are my thoughts I have found on my own. I am sure many before me have made the same thought, so I will not claim to be the first to think about it. Most of what I will say are my own independent thoughts. One last thing, I am thinking of a fourth spatial dimension. I do not know if there truly is a fourth dimension, but if I had to put money down on it, I would say that the fourth dimension is most likely time. But here we are speaking of a spatial dimension. First, we have the third dimension. We live in the third dimension, meaning we have length, width, and height. We can simulate the third dimension on a second dimensional surface, your screen. Here is this cube. If you were to hold a cube in your hand, you would be able to see at most 3 sides with one viewing point. Technically, you can see 4 if you bring it really close in between your eyes, but never mind that. If you have a second dimensional creature, they would only be able to see 2 sides of a square. Though a fourth dimensional creature has a tesseract, a 4-dimensional cube, so I believe they would be able to see 4 sides of the tesseract at one time, assuming light works in all dimensions. If we as third-dimensional creatures want to even try to understand the fourth, we should try to understand how a second sees the third. Let's take little Timmy here, a second-dimensional creature, and let's put him in a piece of paper for the sake of the hypothetical. He wants to see the third dimension, but he can't. If we pass a cube into his dimension, depending on the angle, he would just see a square pop into existence and then pop out, or a super small triangle growing bigger and bigger and then shrinking smaller and smaller. But we can simulate the third dimension in the second. Timmy can now see the cube if we make it out of glass, but he still cannot fully understand it. To him, it is just a square offset of another square with lines connecting the corners. Same thing with the cube within a cube of the tesseract in the third dimension. Instead of putting the third into the second, let's bring the second into the third. Now Timmy can see as far as possible within the third dimension, but he can still only see in the second. So he can see the table, a part of the cup, but he cannot see the spoon over to his right, or at least what we would consider the right. So let's give him the power to rotate. Now he can rotate in the third dimension, and he can now see part of the spoon, but no longer the cup. He can now walk in the third dimension by rotating around. In truth, he likely still does not understand the third dimension, but he can now travel through it. Let's give Timmy a friend, little Jimmy. They are in the same second dimensional plane, but one of them rotates, walks a short distance, and rotates back the same amount as before. They can no longer see one another. Now let's say Jimmy rotates around looking for Timmy, and he finds him, but he can only see the inside of Timmy, and Timmy cannot see Jimmy. This is more or less what a third-dimensional creature sees a second-dimensional creature as. Jimmy most likely still does not fully understand the third dimension, but he can now get it a fair bit better. If Timmy wanted to rob a second-dimensional bank, he would only need to see the vault door, rotate slightly into the third dimension, walk a short distance, rotate again back into the second dimension, grab what he wants, and do everything in reverse to get back out. No second-dimensional force can stop him. Let's put Jimmy and Timmy on slightly different second-dimensional angles in the third dimension. Let's say Timmy walks forward and intercepts Jimmy's dimension. Jimmy, minding his own business, sees the inside of Timmy come into being and walk a short distance and fall right back out. Timmy cannot see Jimmy, and outside of the dimensional free play, this would be absolutely terrifying. We can now go to the fourth dimension and put a third-dimensional creature in it. But before we do that, I have no idea how to illustrate this, so it will most likely be mostly in words, so bear with me. Since we are third-dimensional creatures, we can only have the perspective of third-dimensional creatures, so let us do the rotation bit again. If you were to rotate into the fourth dimension, I do not know what you would find, as I have not the slightest clue. But if you were to see someone rotate into the fourth dimension, he would just be standing there, and then skin, limbs, muscles would disappear. Then he would step forward and disappear entirely. It would likely look like one of those slices of an MRI machine rolling into and out of reality. It would be the same for moving into and out of the third as it is in the fourth. If you want to rob a bank, you only need walk into the fourth dimension and come back into the third when you walked the appropriate distance. If two people walk in slightly offset planes, they would just form and unform into and out of perception. From going second into the third, so is the same from going the third into the fourth. The problem is not knowing what is in the fourth dimension. Let us go to the end of a cliff. In the second dimension, little Timmy can see the edge of the cliff and can understand that he can fall. The same is so with the third dimensional guy here. The guy here knows he can fall based on his perception. Same thing with little Timmy. He can look over the edge and understand that he can fall. However, let's rotate little Timmy 90 degrees and place him directly on the edge of the cliff. Now if he is to rotate, his foot very well may give way and he can fall off the cliff, not ever being able to see it. If you're in the third dimension rotating into the fourth, it is very possible that this may happen. We just don't know what lies in the fourth dimension. I mean, you're probably fine, but there's no way to guarantee that. This rotation also has the potential to be one of the greatest weapons unable to be countered. If you were able to rotate 90 degrees or the equivalent into the fourth dimension, you can see everyone's insides walking by your line of sight, and no one can see you, meaning that you can just punch one of the brains and instantly kill anybody. And no one can stop you as long as you do not walk into their line of sight and get it done to you. We can do it with little Timmy and Jimmy again. Timmy rotates about 90 degrees from Jimmy, and assuming Jimmy does not move, Timmy can walk over and punch his brain, and no one in the second dimension would be able to see it happening. Jimmy would just drop like a sack of potatoes. A little too scary for my liking, so let's move on. For seeing the fourth and the third, let's go back to the cube and the tesseract. We can see that the cube in the second dimension is two offset squares with some lines connecting the corners. So let's do the same for the tesseract in the third dimension. Let's take a cube and offset another cube over it and connect the corners with some lines. And I am now seeing that in the center we have another cube, so maybe this is why the tesseract is presented as a cube within a cube, but I really don't know. This is fine, but I can only show it to you on a second dimensional plane. So I'm going to have to ask you to think a little abstractly about this. Let us do the same as we did with little Timmy and make it out of glass. If we can make this shape in the third dimension, I would say that this is what a fourth dimensional creature would draw on a fourth dimensional paper. In truth, I do not think I could come up with anything else. I cannot understand the fourth dimension beyond what it would look like to go into and out of it, and maybe how to draw a tesseract in the third dimension. All of this thinking for months, and this is all I have to show for it, folks. I still think this is good enough to share with the world and to have everyone tell me how wrong I am. I would love to know your thoughts on the subject. Please let me know in the comments if you are so inclined. I may return to this subject in the future if I can actually get some decent studying done from people who actually know what they're talking about. But nevertheless, this has been fun. Now take care.